Hello and welcome to this Future Tech virtual roundtable from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI. Today we are taking an in-depth look at an increasingly hot-button issue impacting on this sector, the electrification of commercial kitchens. I'm Michael Jones from Progressive Content, Editorial Director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. This roundtable is kindly supported by Welbilt Inc. Many thanks to them. I will explore how operators are responding to the major push to replace gas-powered commercial kitchens with electric alternatives, taking in the environmental, economic and operational benefits and looking at how this trend towards net zero and low carbon kitchens will manifest later this decade. I'm delighted to be joined by four exceptional FCSI professional member consultants and the SVP of New Product Development and Innovation at Welbilt. So firstly, let me ask each participant to introduce themselves and tell us about their organizations and their area of expertise. Peg, ladies first, can we start with you first, please?
Thank you. Peg Galie. I'm with S2L Consultants. So I am honored to work with Harry Schildkraut and Kristen today. We have a team of about 8 or 9 people. We do quite a bit of sports. We also do university work, B&I, and some schools. And I've been with the company about 7.5 years. It's been a pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you, Peg. And Foster, please.
With Clevenger-Frable-LaValle, we're a multidiscipline food service consultant. We're concentrate mostly in hospitality and healthcare, are 2 major sectors. We do a lot of high-end and freestanding restaurant work, which is very sensitive to the issues of electric versus gas cooking.
Fantastic. Thank you, Foster. Marcin, please.
Marcin Zmiejko, YoungCaruso, based of Denver, Colorado. We're a consulting company. We basically work on every single project that involves commercial food service. And just to mention a few, sporting arenas, B&I, schools, hospitality, correctional facilities, and anything else.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcin. And Kip, please.
Hi, my name is Kip Serfozo, and I'm with Cini-Little. I'm a design director and a designer in many markets as well. Our primary markets that we work in are healthcare, schools, hospitality, and workplace. And happy to be here today.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Kip. And Phil, please.
Hi, Mike. I'm Phil Radford. I'm the Senior Vice President of New Product Development and Innovation for Welbilt. I've been with the company for around 14 years now. I spent my whole career working in product development, so I typically come to these debates from a product perspective, and that's generally the lens through which I see these challenges.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Phil. Okay, so to kick things off, can you all just spend a moment detailing, I guess, the state of play, the current state of play with regards to gas-powered commercial kitchens being replaced with electric alternatives in the project work that you focus on and the clients that you serve? Can we start with you first, please, Foster?
Yes, I mean, we've seen the interest from European chefs that have seen referred to as cold kitchens in France and Germany, where this has been a trend for some time, just from a culinary and also from an energy standpoint. Moving now into the U.S., we're getting a lot of questions from developers who are being told that they should be planning on all electric kitchens, what impact it's going to have, and then that in turn comes back to the chefs asking how they're going to prepare what they're offering without the traditional gas stoves and grills. And we're seeing more and more jurisdictions every week either passing regulations or proposing. The most recent one is in Los Angeles County, which is a huge, second largest metropolitan area in the country. So.
Thank you, Foster. And Marcin, are you seeing this kind of fast-moving landscape as well? Is that your experience?
Yes, we just had a project that was pretty much completed with a mixed equipment, gas and electric based. And we were asked to go through this exercise and replace gas equipment with electric equipment. So yeah, there is a movement for sure that we see. We can observe that. Most definitely, the industry and end users are moving into the directions of electrical equipment.
Thank you, Marcin. Kip, does that reflect your experience as well?
It does. It's really fascinating how it seems like, as Foster mentioned, it's the legislation, I think, that's really pushing this agenda. For example, the LEED Net Zero, which has been out for 3 years now, is a push for more electrification. The Living Building Challenge is another certification for buildings that also endorses the practice. And then I don't know if you've heard about OSHA California has a really big push about keeping the temperature of the kitchen below 82 degrees. So that kind of leads more towards, a colder kitchen. So it's interesting to see, all these jurisdictions. New York City, of course, now is all mandated their construction projects to be electric, and so has many parts of California. So we're kind of seeing the legislation really pushing this agenda probably the quickest.
Thank you, Kip. And Peg, is that your experience in Chicago and across the nationwide projects that you're working on?
We haven't really seen it in Chicago, but we have seen it on the West Coast. We have 2 buildings, one in Seattle and one in the LA area, that are either being designed for complete electric or are actually completed. So it's been an interesting experience to go to the electric because, chefs always prefer gas, but a lot of it, we've kind of helped them understand, actually, those electric fryers are more efficient than the gas. So the only place we're really getting a little bit hung up is the char broilers and the ranges. So Welbilt, please build an electric char broiler. Go under ventless.
Well, that's an amazing segue into our new XHP boiler that is the high efficiency alternative to the standard boiler, which you guys should all be specifying. So our friend up in Garland should take care of that for you. No, I see this as it's an international problem where different countries have got a different appetite for this type of thing. You think about the Americas and Asia, heavily gas using economies. Locally available gas is much cheaper than electricity. And we do see that places, mainland Europe, for example, the UK, electric is becoming the norm from transport to house heating. You may not know that in the UK now all new builds have to come on an electric car charging port, included with the new build houses, apartments, all with their own charging port. And it's the drive to go away from using gasoline in the area. So definitely, but I think that food service is a bit slow to respond. You look at the operators making very similar equipment for many, many years, and it is a little bit slower to respond than others. I think the legislation's got a part, but I believe in reality that consumers will drive the trend more directly.
And a question, I guess, for all of you, I don't know who wants to pick this one up, but to Peg's point there that electric may be more efficient, but chefs prefer gas. Are there particular sectors that are leading the way here where it's more prevalent? Are some sectors better suited to going electric? I don't know who wants to pick that up.
I can just kick off that if you like. I mean, I think you're right that gas is great when you've got some theatre to show to consumers. I mean, we all know that a member of the public can see their food created. They have an experience that is better than just receiving it over a counter. And that theatre is important in a lot of restaurant environments. That's why we see a tendency to power gas in full service restaurants. We see that more of a tendency. I think it's easier to convert the hidden kitchens to electric than it is the exposed kitchens. I think that's more thing that I see. So room service, convenience stores, coffee shops where the preparation is done behind the scenes, that is typically easier to change to electric, I feel.
With the sports venues, it's, the chefs will adjust, they'll be fine. Everybody adjusts, but most of it is behind the scenes. And if we want some theater, we can, do some sort of fabulous pizza oven or something that puts on that show. And so many things are markets these days that it's behind the scenes cooking anyway.
I think a lot of the, the workplace segment seems to be joining rapidly. And I think it's building owners that are exposed to sustainability. And I think they're the ones that are kind of coming on first, and they're kind of forcing the issue to whatever food service is in their building. So if it's a larger building, that's going to be a sustainable building culture, they kind of force the issue onto if there's restaurants or food service in the building. But I think it's certainly like lighter duty operations are easier to go electric first before the gas. Seems like the restaurant industry may be the slower sector, but it seems like most of the other sectors like healthcare and schools and workplace are kind of leading the way on this.
Excellent. Thank you, Kit. Foster, you had a point.
Yeah, there's two other factors in the electrification. Number one is a lot of areas now, the getting gas service is a 2-year experience, going through the permitting process and getting it installed. That is as much a factor in New York as it is the regulatory and the leads issues. If you want to open a restaurant and you can't get gas, and you can't, in most city areas, you can't use propane, you're stuck with electric, whether you like it or not, simply because of availability, regardless of the other issues. The second problem is that when I started in this business, there were several manufacturers like Lang and General Electric that only made electric cooking equipment. And they pushed the envelope in the broiler area, banquet broilers, things of that nature, that are all part of a typical hotel kitchen, many hospital kitchens. And as the industry went through a consolidation and rethinking about things, a lot of the good electric broiling and charbroil equipment went by the wayside in favor of gas. And those items will need to be reinvented and brought back if we're going to be able to offer the kinds of foods that want to be on those pieces of equipment. They're just not available in electric.
It's an excellent point. Thank you, Foster. Marcin, would you say this is yet something we can describe as a mega trend, the decarbonisation of kitchens? Is it that big of an issue in the industry?
It's definitely starts. I don't know if it's as wide as we would like this to be, but yeah, it's definitely picking up. It's got its momentum. I think corporate dining is definitely leading that path because the companies have their mission statements where they want to go be more lead oriented, be more environment friendly, and right behind them, I think culinary schools where they want the chefs to learn how to operate with electric equipment. When we do a lot of work internationally, and when you go out of the country, like to far Asia, the electrical equipment is predominant. Yeah. They specifically use electric equipment, and when you come back here to United States, the gas is less expensive, so it's more affordable to go to gas historically. I see small restaurants really being like in the last of this trend, but probably every single year when we move forward into our projects, we'll see those changes. My biggest question is how we're going to deal with all those design build projects that were designed years ago based on a gas equipment. All of a sudden, they're not so much design build; they'll be more like design than design build. And I'm just anxious to look at them. What's going to happen? Maybe not next month, but like a year, 2 years from now.
Thank you, Marcin. Let's come to the design build element in a moment. But for now, you mentioned there that the corporate dining and possibly things like the culinary schools leading the way here. Just a question to the whole panel, really. Is it primarily the kind of the ESG agenda that's driving this? What are the primary catalysts for making the kind of decarbonisation happen? Is it sustainability, or are there other factors at play?
In many cases, just as Foster mentioned before, having a gas in the facility is a challenge. You need to wait for the connection, and sometimes you're just located in such a remote location that the connection for electrical power is way simpler and less expensive than providing entire gas infrastructure. The challenges, when people look at the electric equipment, they think like, okay, we just need to do 120 volt and let's move. It's not that simple. When we're putting those big commercial food service equipment, such as combi ovens, you need to have a really high voltage connectivity. And once you have all those things available to you, we can talk about full-blown kitchen being electric. If we have those, it's still, I believe it's still simpler to deliver something at the level of 480 voltage rather than run a big pipe with gas to the building when it's not available to you. Yeah, once you have those utilities available to you, and it's a go.
Peg, on that front then, in your experience, is this change being mandated more by the energy codes, or is it the incentivization coming because of utility electrification dollars? And also, how effective are those measures?
Yeah, I think it's a little of both. In Southern California, it's obviously legislation. In Seattle, I don't believe they had legislation. That particular facility the naming rights are owned by Amazon, and they have a very zero carbon. There's a very zero carbon focused, and they have promotional videos and everything, and they're very proud of it, and they should be. It was a fun project to work on. Yeah, we've seen things to be very successful and effective. The one thing that we have run into from time to time is that the building is maxed out on their electric grid. They just can't get any more electric. So that's something that we always have to look at. Can we actually bring in those heavy duty utilities to support this equipment or not?
And Foster, from your experience, is it certainly in New York, is it legislation that's driving that agenda?
It is in New York, definitely. And the power company, our major suppliers of power in the area, National Grid and Con Ed, are pushing very hard to encourage people away from gas for capacity issues right now, in future growth. I want to add one other factor that is both a plus and minus to the change to electric, and that is induction. I think today induction cooking is considerably more accepted in the culinary world than it was even 5 years ago. But on the flip side, the first induction equipment that came on the market had a lot of reliability issues. So you're fighting on one side a better, more energy efficient way of cooking that's proven certainly in Europe, versus a legacy of problematic issues with expensive induction ranges failing early on in their use. So you got that trade-off that chefs remember.
Phil, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, exactly. You're right there, Foster. The history for induction is still quite new. I mean, if you think it's probably 20 years since the first commercial induction systems have been available. Now, I think we've broken the back of that reliability challenge. We have very high power, very reliable, very high speed induction systems for hob cooking. And if you look at the full range of what's available, you can have induction powered woks, you have induction griddles, so you can griddle on an induction surface which doesn't give off any heat effectively. But the challenge there is the other part of the issue, that people have to use induction compatible cookware. They have to be aware that you cook with it differently. We talked about education in chef schools, that with a gas pan, you put it on the range, you heat it up, then you add your ingredients. With induction, it's the other way around. You put your ingredients in the pan, then you turn the induction on, because the power comes on so quickly, you run the risk of overheating the pan. So it's about all of the equation, not just the equipment or the chef or the hardware. It's about the whole three sides of that event.
Brilliant. Thank you, Phil. Kip, a question for you. Marcin talked there about kind of the impact on the design built environment. How in turn is this trend causing kitchen design to kind of evolve as well and move forward? Is it impacting directly on how you're designing kitchens? Is your design philosophy and how you think about a kitchen space changing, or is it a slight adjustment?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's so many variables that are impacting the design. One of the variables that is the well building challenge, or excuse me, the well building registration, and we're seeing owners that want to go into that if they want to register their building as a well building, one of the stipulations is the air quality in the kitchen, so the thermal comfort, and then also the actual quality of the air. So when you're thinking a chef over a 6-burner gas range, you're inhaling the carbon monoxide. There's a lot of gases that are not healthy. So the electrification really helps. A colder, more comfortable environment. There's less crap in the air that you're breathing. So it's a sustainable, more wellness program for the kitchens. And it's interesting how the Culinary Olympics recently they're operating in an all-electric kitchen. So chefs are starting to learn more and more about this. But it's interesting you're asking about the design. In most cases, it's kind of just like a switch. You're switching electric, for a gas unit. There's a lot of equipment that's kind of like for like, but it's just either electric or gas. But one of the interesting things, I think it's allowing us to get designed for a tighter kitchen, because when you think about that big gas line that's behind all the cooking equipment, if there is gas, if you can eliminate that gas line, you can essentially push all of your equipment right back to the back wall underneath the hoods. You've got better capture rate. You've got a smaller kitchen. I mean, every square inch adds up, right? Especially when we're working in New York City. So it's just from a design perspective, we're able to do a tighter kitchen with electric.
Brilliant. Let's look at the challenges this might present then to operators. So, Marcin, what are the biggest challenges your clients are facing as they make that transition towards kitchen decarbonisation? What is, other than the kind of legislative impetus, what is holding them back from making this transition?
So, in my opinion, one of the biggest one is chefs, because chefs tend to have big egos. They tend to have their way of cooking things. And if somebody wants open flame, somebody wants open flame. There's nothing you can do. There's no equivalent in the range that, with everything, with all the roads that induction made from when it was first introduced till today, it's still not the same as open flame. So if we have a chef who's essentially a decision-making person, that guy can simply be the most holding in the biggest obstacle for us on the way to go into the fully electrical kitchen. With that, there are still some pieces of equipment that we still want to have electrically operated, and they not. I believe like 90% of the equipment in the kitchen already is ready to flip from gas to, because it doesn't matter whether your combi oven or convection oven is electric or gas. The opinions might be different, but pretty much the same final effect can be delivered by switching. Other obstacles could be the lack of infrastructure, as I mentioned before. If we have existing kitchen and all of a sudden we want to flip fryer battery from gas to electric, you really need a lot of power and as high voltage as possible. Those, in my opinion, those are the biggest obstacles. Those are the biggest challenges. Once the industry will follow that trend and we'll have one-for-one equipment that can be easily flipped, and we'll have this 100% equipment availability, I think will decrease any challenges that we can face.
Excellent answer. Thank you, Marcin. Foster, do you feel that you and your peers, your fellow consultants, are getting the information you need about what changes need to be made, the changes in codes that are coming, the availability of equipment that's out there? Do you feel that's kind of cutting through?
I think it's coming through. Obviously, not having the shows, missing NAFM and NRA has kept that ability to have the one-on-one conversations with the manufacturers. But it's I think the industry trade magazines have done a good job of sharing the issues and the problems.
Excellent, thank you. And to flip that around, I guess, Phil, to give us the perspective from the equipment manufacturers, how are you working closely with Foster and other consultants to stay close to them and to the needs of operators to convey the benefits of the equipment that you have that's available towards a decarbonised kitchen?
Actually, if we look across the whole range of equipment we make, we always like to have the new product being better than the last in everything we measure, everything we care about. And what we care about typically is what our operators care about. So if they care about low cost, high reliability, low total cost of ownership is something that we hear more and more. We'd like to get to the position where we could position a piece of equipment based on its whole lifetime cost, because we believe that equipment that has a lower lifetime cost, lower end of life cost, is a very, very important metric when it comes to winning an RFQ. So there are two sides to that discussion. Operators want efficient, effective, reliable equipment, and we as a provider want to sell equipment that meets operators' needs. So where we sell, as we mentioned just now, gas alternatives and electric alternatives, which are interchangeable. But there's more than one way to produce every food item. You can choose to fry it or grill it or bake it, and the use of alternative techniques or equipment for doing that traditional food preparation is happening more and more. Combi ovens are taking over, speed ovens are taking over. So you end up using less energy. Gas or electric, energy is energy. You end up using less energy to create the same food item. And I think we're seeing that more and more, requests for non-standard commercial equipment.
Great stuff. Thank you, Phil. To that point then, Peg, to Phil's point about kind of, the benefits of lower lifetime costs, lower energy costs, that kind of stuff, are your clients seeing these tangible benefits of going all electric, and kind of what kind of impact is it having? What sort of feedback are you getting from them once it's been installed?
In Seattle, we've had nothing but good, everybody's happy. They're happy. They were very worried about timing, is this going to slow down our cooking? And they realized that, most of this equipment is more efficient. So they've been very happy. That particular operator, I think, has moved forward with some other electric buildings. They realize the value from a marketing standpoint, as well as a legislative and just ROI. We've had no complaints. So that's always a good thing. Silence is golden for us.
And Kip, as a kind of an extension of that, I mean, Foster was mentioning earlier about kind of how induction has improved over the years, induction technology. Is there any type of electric cooking equipment that you've seen that's really kind of changing the game for operators and having a good impact, a positive impact?
Yeah, they're definitely the speed ovens that Phil mentioned are huge, right? The throughput is so fast, and the footprint is smaller. It mixes the microwaves with the infrared, with the convected air movement, and it's been very impressed with the quality of the food that comes out of those ovens. And getting back to induction, I just wanted to point out how what I really love about it is it's so easy to clean, right? You don't have this 6-burner range that you have to take out the grates and scrub all the little nooks and crannies. You just take a nice, a towel and soap, and you just wipe off the burner. So or wipe off the glass. So it's super labor efficient. People love it. It's easy to clean. You can move it around if it's like a walk induction range, or you've got the portable induction units. So it has the flexibility is great from a design standpoint. You don't have this big chunky 6-burner gas thing that's like can't move or whatever. So I love that. I also love the just the electric multi-use equipment, the stuff like it's able to thaw, hold, warm, chill, stuff like that, where you can put food into one piece of equipment and do multiple things with it. I think is a win-win for a lot of operators. So yeah, been very impressed with the equipment technology recently.
Excellent, thank you, Kip. Same sort of question to you, I guess, Marcin. How have you seen this kind of equipment help operators to, change up their offering as well?
I always look at the electrically operated equipment as a more controlled environment, instead of something that's powered on the open flame. And I look at the electrical equipment as something that can be operated with a little bit less of human interaction. So something that requires something, let's say, that is based on a slow cooking. You can cook and prepare something without, you can preset your oven that's electrically operated to be turned on without a human being present there. And during the time that normally a person would have to go and supervise it, something that goes for a couple hours at the lower temperature, it's very highly unlikely for somebody to set up gas-operated oven and leave it and go somewhere else. With the electrically operated oven, you can leave that. You can have the offering that before was not really available because nobody could afford to sit like 4 hours and babysit the oven until, let's say, like prime rib is being cooked or something that requires slow cooking. So yeah, I think with electrically powered units, people can see more offerings. Somebody mentioned before, all those speed ovens, all those things that don't require ventilation and gas. You can basically expand your offering by just adding the piece of equipment that can be positioned somewhere, not necessarily under controlled ventilation.
Great answer. Thank you, Marcin. Foster, are you getting any pushback from your clients at all about installing this kind of new all-electric equipment? Is anyone not seeing the benefits?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. We designed the test kitchens, and well, it's now almost 2 years from the initial design, but we designed the test kitchen and the studio kitchens for the Food Network. And they wanted to have, and basically we have 30 cooking stations, and of the 30, 28 are gas, and 2 are electric, and they're not induction. And they're chefs who, won't editorialize, but you've seen them on TV, all said, nobody uses induction in the United States. So we don't want to develop any menus or recipes based upon inductions. And this is within the last year. I was shocked because it's obviously very different than in Europe. There's another variable too that has really changed the dynamics of larger commercial kitchens. And that is the lack or loss of steam. When you take gas and oil away, you lose the ability to have a central steam boiler. Now, this affects a hotel, any of the big casinos. It certainly affects hospitals. And when bringing back the issue of the electric requirement, if you have 6 kettles and a big dishwasher with a booster heater, all those items used to be steam in virtually all the larger hotels. Any Hilton hotel, for example, always would have a steam plant. So you now have to also add the electric load for your 75 kW booster heater that used to be steam to the mix. So now you end up with an electrical room that looks like it could run an airport. Or a supermarket, and it really becomes you need that much power when the engineer finally gets your loads, and I don't know how to solve that. Because you can make steam with coal, you can make steam with gas, and you make steam with oil, but none of those are acceptable alternatives. No, in hotels we had steam coffee makers in these bigger hotels, and we had a big banquet room. Those, no more.
Yeah, it is interesting, Foster, because when you consider the need for heat or energy with large kettles, there's no alternative to having a massive steam supply to heat the jacketed kettle up. That's the way you're going to get quickest heat generation, fastest food cooking surface, and it's very difficult to replace that with an electrical load. But if you think about the majority of commercial kitchens, if you consider each piece of equipment in isolation, there's always energy input and always energy output. And if we consider that holistically, we could chain those together in a connected way, where the heat output from, say, a gas fryer could be used to power a holding station, or the heat output from a walk-in freezer could be used to warm the dining area. But to do that, you have to connect the appliances physically, and we need to then view the whole system as an ecosystem. So we take the energy transfer from piece to piece to piece. So the overall load of the store or the restaurant would be lower. So the 75 kW you mentioned for the kettle may turn into the same 75 kW for the whole store, because you can share the waste byproducts of heating with other pieces of equipment to save the overall load. That's why I think equipment providers can offer a more holistic view, or an ecosystem type approach of connected equipment with related inputs and outputs of energy usage.
It would be great if we could see something like that happen.
Fantastic. Moving along a bit, one of the, I think, Marcin, you mentioned how those kind of hidden kitchens, kind of convenience stores, coffee shops, retail are obviously, it might be at the moment in some instances better suited for using electrical equipment. Peg, do you feel that ghost kitchen concepts are really well suited towards an all-electric model? Is there any kind of variation on that at all?
At the end of the day, a ghost kitchen is a cooking kitchen. So I really don't see any difference. If you can do it in an arena, you can do it in a ghost kitchen. That's my opinion.
Okay, fantastic. Marcin, let's look at other possible kind of maybe unintended consequences of decarbonising commercial kitchens. Are there any sort of positive side effects to helping address the ongoing labour crisis in the industry by the move towards adopting electrical equipment?
Yeah, a couple. For example, if you think of Starbucks, here in the United States, you can go to Starbucks, you can get a breakfast sandwich. And if you think about it, if you take that sandwich apart, you'll realize, like, historically, all those components used to be, grilled or fried or baked. Now you have a situation where somebody can just pull, product already prepared and reheat it without using any equipment that historically was gas operated. Mm-hmm. So you don't need two people, like in a quick service restaurants from a previous life. I remember there used to be three people, order taker, expediter, and whoever brings order to the client. Now that can be reduced to a single person because the technology allows for doing that. So I think that helps a lot, and we can see that already out there. It can only progress and be more inclusive. More menu can be introduced to be used by those pieces of equipment. Also, I think robotics has a great future. And you might ask what robotics got to do with decarbonization of the kitchen. Well, I think controlling a robot with something that operates on the same platform, instead of having electrically operated robot and gas operated fryer, let's say, helps a little. You don't need to have that eye that controls both. So I see an opportunity there.
Thank you, Marcin. Phil, I guess that kind of segues into your previous point about connected kitchens and how you can automate.
Absolutely.
How easy is it is it easier to bolt on these added applications to electrical equipment than it would be for a standard gas powered?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we mentioned just now, you don't want to leave a gas appliance unattended. When you have an automated kitchen or an automated process step, by definition, it's unattended. Otherwise, there'd be no point to automate it. So typically, electricity can be safer in those environments. You only put the power in that you need. You accurately control the temperature and the time, and you end up getting a more controlled cooking process. But thinking about automation, I think there are two main types of automation that will affect a commercial kitchen. One of them is human replacement. You've seen the robotic burger flipper that takes a burger from a gas-powered griddle and turns it over. And you've also seen processes where a burger is cooked in its entirety from a raw to properly cooked state with a process that's entirely autonomous. Those two are different types of automation, and it depends what your consumer wants. I think from a theatre perspective, watching your burger flipped by a robotic limb is quite exciting. But from an eating perspective, how different does it taste? In some cases, the difference is there isn't one. But it depends on the application. It depends on the environment.
In general, there's a real pushback with a lot of chefs with automation, and that has a contrary situation with electric, because I think a lot of chefs and operators see a basic gas range or a basic gas oven as non-electric. We all know a convection oven has to have a fan, but they've seen them as simplicity. No matter what happens, they can make something because they've got 6 burners and they got an oven. And electric equipment, because you could, became kind of the first place that they started introducing computerized controls. And all those first computerized controls were very disappointing, to say the least. Some of the chains obviously drove it and they made them work, but I cannot tell you how many over the years, how many clients have sent me, copies of bills for replacing control boards on equipment that have been just outright, almost half the price of the equipment. So I think that's going to be a big push because electric and induction indicate computer controls and all these types of things. Maybe if electric broilers and things like that come back, with the key is designing them with the same simplicity as the gas equipment that's replacing.
Great stuff. Thank you, Foster. Let's get a question for all of you, really. Then, in your experience, we talked about sustainability and kind of the ESG agenda at the top of the chat, but did sustainability have to take something of a back seat for operators during the pandemic, as operators had to focus on, I guess, kind of just survival of their business, becoming, or have you seen it become more important than ever? How has sustainability influenced decision making for operators going forward, especially framing that within the kind of electrification of commercial kitchens? Kip, could you take that one first, please?
Sure. Yeah, I think COVID-19 really kind of paused us to all think about sustainability. We're worried about the triple bottom line in the pandemic. We're worried about people, right? We're worried about the planet. We're worried about people having jobs and profitability. So it's kind of interesting how that mindset of the pandemic also translates to sustainability, right? Because we're worried about our future. We're worried about global warming, climate change, and a lot of big sustainable issues. So I think even during the pandemic, I think teams were still, having that mindset that sustainability is kind of an ingrained thing. It's here to stay, and we all need to work forward. But of course, during the pandemic, we had to pause a little bit on certain things because we were kind of in emergency mode. But I think that transition is over, and I think really people are very concerned about sustainability and electrification and trying to make the environment better in the kitchen for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, Kit. Marcin, is it the same in your experience?
There's pros and cons. I look at this as because many restaurants, many food service outlets were closed, or at least their portions were closed. Some companies had opportunity to upgrade to a better and more sustainable environment and equipment. So as a little guy somewhere, some small pizza shop might really struggle and decide not to go with any, upgrades towards more sustainable environment. Somebody on a chain side, on a bigger, have taken advantage due to through those, government helps, assistance into upgrading their stores in the restaurants. So probably the line should be drawn somewhere in the middle.
Peg, what about you? What's your experience there?
So it's kind of interesting because we have seen, the electrification is great, but then on the other side, we've seen the use of to-go containers and bottled product. So as we're saving electric, we're filling landfills because of COVID. There has been a big push to not have bottled beverages, whether that be beer, wine, whatever it is. They don't want draft. If they do, it's direct draw. We've also seen a lot more interest in the frictionless markets, that where there aren't people. The people are walking. You pre-register, you walk in, you take what you want, and you leave. So that's helping with that labor shortage, and I think COVID brought that out. It's every project we're working on, we have frictionless markets. So I think it's great that we're doing the electrification, but then on the other side, there's still all those plastic containers that are going in landfills.
It's an excellent point. Thank you, Peg. And Foster, what's your view on that?
I'm very disappointed in a lot of operators and clients that are not walking the talk. They just aren't making those decisions to adopt, unless they're forced into it from a marketing standpoint, like an office building that has to attract corporations that are looking for leads, and wellness buildings It's the same situation as the car market in the U.S. And the electric car market is only 3 or 4%, versus Europe, where it's approaching 20 and 30% in most of the countries. So we just don't have that mindset, and it goes across everything. The idea of having people driving old cars and delivering food everywhere. In the situation with the labor and the pandemic and everything, it's just totally contrary to logic, but that's the way it is.
Phil, what's your view?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Foster. I mean, over here, most new cars you see on the road are now electric in the UK. Electric cars are in very short supply because everybody's trying to buy one. To drive into major cities, you now need to pay surcharges to drive in unless you're driving an electric car. So that's the stick part of the carrot and stick relationship that the regulators or the cities are forcing it to happen. I mean, don't forget we pay $10 a gallon over here for our gas as well. So it's a bit more expensive to drive a gas vehicle. But I think if you think about a commercial kitchen, we've been through the workforce shortages, and now that's still an issue. But now, from an equipment perspective, we are getting huge challenges from the global shortage of electronics and electrical components. In some areas, we are only out to make our more simple appliances. Our basic, for example, gas fryers are selling more than our high-tech electrical touchscreen fryers because we just can't get the components. We're just physically on 1 or 2 years lead time for electronic components, which is giving us a challenge. But I think in Europe, natural gas is still significantly more cheaper, a third the price of electricity. So we're still going to see significant gas uses across our continent. But I think the compelling case to fully electrify has to come from both sides of that equation. We need the ecosystem of the kitchen to be sensitive to high electricity costs and therefore low waste. But we also need regulators to encourage users and operators to do the right thing.
Great answer. Thank you, Phil. A final question, and I'd like to get all of your thoughts on this if possible, please. If we could go sort of round the virtual table, as it were. Let's kind of look into the crystal ball if we can. And can you all predict how commercial kitchens will have adapted along the kind of the decarbonisation journey towards all electric kitchens in the future? What does this landscape look like in, say, 3 years' time? Phil, can we stay with you first, please? And then we'll go around the consultants as well. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's going to be a combined thing. We're going to see change on both sides, a little bit of carrot, a little bit of stick. I would really like to see global operators or global chains be considerate of their request to have net zero operations without the added benefit of guaranteed purchase for a period of time, so operators or suppliers of equipment can invest the amount of money required to provide that type of equipment. There's concern that the investment isn't going to pay off in those areas. I think providers should spend more money on a larger percentage of their R&D or engineering dollars into renewable alternatives, connecting appliances to provide the whole solution rather than focusing on just parts of the kitchen without any interaction between the two. I think generally we'll see companies entering or growing in the market which advocate the use of net zero or the net zero message. Consumers want this. I think we're going to see more cases of it being a necessary rather than nice to have in some areas. And I think people are going to get involved with that. Consumers, social media is going to be more and more a message going forward from where we consume our food products.
Great stuff. Thank you, Phil. Marcin, your view on that, please.
I think unless we have this promotion and like Phil mentioned, social media and specialty magazines and TVs broadcasting that this particular chain decided to achieve net zero and that one, I don't expect this to move rapidly as fast as we would like it to be. And I look in terms of regulation, if municipalities will enforce that to happen, I will look at this as we look sometimes at health departments. You know, like, believe it or not, if you build a kitchen in San Diego area before 1986, you don't need to have a hand sink until today. That's the regulation how it was before then. And if you haven't upgraded, if you just basically haven't majorly renovated your kitchen, you still don't need to have a hand sink. That's what it is. So the same thing we'll face probably for a few years, because there'll be regulations that will be grandfathered in and people will take advantage of those. If someone will build a brand new kitchen, completely different story. But I see a combination of both for quite some time.
Foster, do you agree with that? Do you think it's going to be a long road, as Marcin predicted there, or do you think a change will come sooner?
Well, I think it's going to take a lot of education of the chefs. I think it's the same kind of education that had to happen when combi ovens came out. It took a long time in the US to get interest in the combi oven product, and for that matter, microwaves when they first came about. So I think we're going to have to educate the chefs and operators, and I think the manufacturers are going to have to come up with solutions that will give, as an example, when Applebee's wanted to offer wood-fired cooking and they realized they couldn't do they couldn't put in the kind of precipitators and so forth that were required. They commissioned a gas grill that had a wood smoker attachment in the bottom, which I believe about 3 different major manufacturers made those grills. I think what we need now is an induction grill that has or some type of high electric grill that has ability to put wood chips underneath to get wood flavoring. Because right now, wood cooking or solid fuel cooking is very hot in many segments. And we don't have an alternative to gas right now.
Great answer. Thank you, Foster. Kip, what's your view on this? Are you positive that the decarbonisation of the kitchen will happen sooner rather than later? Or do you think it's a longer journey than that?
I think it's going to be pretty quick, but not all segments and all projects. But I kind of see it like the electric car industry. I just feel like the kitchens are going to become more electric, probably quicker than slower. I just think there's all the jurisdictions and the legislation and LEED and well building and living building challenge. Even though an owner might not want to pay to adopt that particular certification, they're asking their team to follow it, right? So they might say, we would like the LEED standard, we would like the net zero standard. So I think these big organizations like the Green Building Council are doing, marketing, a lot of marketing towards electrification. And I think that's going to kind of push more electric, kind of at a faster pace than we've seen ever before. So we'll see.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Kip. And finally to you as well, please, Peg.
I agree with Foster. I think the education piece is what's either going to speed this up or slow it down, so to speak. We typically see these things start on the coast. It's in California. It always moves west. How quickly it's going to move west, in my opinion, is based on the education of the chef, those boots on the ground people, getting them to understand that this is actually a good thing. And here's how you do it. So, and then the next piece is, do the places that want to go all electric have the infrastructure to support it? Because that is an issue.
Peg, that's a really pertinent point to close on there, I think. And what a great discussion from a really exceptional panel. Thank you so much. So Peg, Foster, Kip, Marcin and Phil, huge thanks for joining us today. I'd also like to thank Welbilt for their continued support. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to fcsi.org for future events. Thank you.